Hello.
This is the Christmas reindeer and Santa's little elf coming at you. Oh, a Hallmark Channel elf. Okay. All right. My apologies. We are coming at you as the Christmas reindeer named HH and the
So I'm
Hallmark
also
Christmas elf called Hawkie. There we go. Hawkie Heartie.
so
I
we
think
did
we might
not
have just
rehearse this part. Humor. It shows humor.
Okay. I am Cami, the hooked Heartie.
I'm Sarah, the hawk-eyed Heartie, and we are here for a very special Christmas edition of Hearties Hotline.
This is a bonus episode for one of the most anticipated Christmas films of the year on the Hallmark Channel. Santa, tell me! These two back on the screen together again after 6+ years.
Which two?
Amazing.
Who are you talking about?
Oh,
Which two?
right. Nikki DeLoach
Oh, yes.
and Tyler Hines.
They should do a movie together. That
They
would
should.
be
I was thinking
that would be a really
pairing.
yes. Wow. What of all the times we've talked about pairings, I don't think that one's come up. That's a good one. Hallmark, get on that.
Yes, I mean, she's been with his cousin. It's all in the family. No, we are, of course, talking about Aaron Krakow and Daniel Lissing and Christopher Russell and Benjamin Ayres and how do you say it? It's Kurt Sarka. There it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So many great names all in one movie. I think that Hallmark had to have known that the Dan and Aaron pairing has been long sought after by many fans.
Yeah, Hallmark Channel beat us to it.
They did beat us to it.
Yeah.
Who would have known when you take this many years to write a screenplay?
Oh, right.
That somebody else might do it first. It is a very different movie. We can still write the screenplay, but it won't be the first Dan and Aaron pairing if we can get them. But Hallmark knew this was going to be epic, and they said, we can't just cast a bunch of the smaller, newer actors. We have to go big with this movie. Yeah. I think it was pretty brilliant to bring in some people that are very well known in the Hallmark world.
Yeah.
And what I also wanted to point out was in most movies where you have someone, the main character, trying to decide between people, it's usually more obvious, right? From the outside. Like to us, it's obvious because Daniel's the star of the movie. So we knew, right? But if you're the sister and you're hearing about these people that she's meeting, these guys that she's taken interest in, usually it would be very obvious and you'd be like, oh, probably not that guy. He's a jerk. Don't go with him. He's not your soulmate. Or that guy, really, he's a great guy, but man, you guys do not see eye to eye on so many things. This is not a good match. What I loved about this is that there were great qualities about all three guys, some more than others, but there were great reasons why she would be interested in each one, why she would think that could potentially be her match. And so I found that more interesting, more, engaging as a viewer, that you're not watching this person struggle between an obvious choice and why.
That's what we should put on the next poster. Obvious choice and why. Nick C, I was going why.
Not the very beginning, though.
The first time she met him.
There were flags, so to speak. Maybe not bright glaring red flags at first, but it, they slowly got brighter, just showing that it wasn't a match. And like, okay, we can eliminate one.
The other thing is, because they have cast Kurt in this movie where everyone else is a huge Hallmark name, this is going to skyrocket his status as a Hallmark man.
Oh, yes. He has also played a dying groom, so he can do dramatic deaths. He was the groom in Picture Perfect, the first Picture Perfect movie that got murdered. And so like you've got all these different things that he's done that are big Hallmark things. Playing a victim in a Hallmark mystery is big. It can be big.
It's just not the most noticed.
It's not the most noticed, but he definitely, and that's one of the more dramatic deaths they've actually had on Hallmark, because a lot of the Hallmark deaths are either they happen off screen and you find a body, or it's more of just like I clunked you on the head and you fell over. So being shot while you're dipping your bride during your first dance, I mean, that's crazy. Yeah. So that was really cool. And he also didn't, that wasn't his first scene in the movie. You got to see him interact with a few people earlier in the film. Pretty memorable, in my opinion. And also, he's a groom. So, I mean, on Hallmark, to be a groom, that's a pretty big deal also. And do hope that it kind of bumps up his status a little bit and that we get to see more of him, because he was a great character. The character himself, not the perfect leading man, but you could really see his acting.
And you got it. He portrayed that character to a T. The character himself, not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree light string, but he did it really, really well. And he's definitely handsome. So
he is. And that was just, it was really fun to kind of see the comparison. You do want to have these three guys that she's all wondering if they are her guy.
Right.
But you also need to be able to have them be different from each other. You can't have them all be great catches for the same reason. And so, he had the more brawn of the three, maybe?
That's a good word. That's a very good word.
Yeah.
So we've talked about Nick C. Let's go to Nick B. I have to say this one thing. So Caroline, my friend from Hallmarkies, she said, so are these three going to chop wood for Olivia's affections? And I tweeted back to her and I said, well, nobody chopped wood on camera, but it is highly implied that Nick B did chop wood.
First of all, I want to say one of my favorite things about this film was the character of Darcy, her sister. Oh my because God. She would just sweep in with these funny lines out of nowhere. And she really is what brought the humor, I think, to this movie. Obviously also some of the Dan and Aaron banter, which they're famous for. Yes. But outside of that, Darcy was the comic relief. Really just loved the comment she made to Nick B. My sister loves what you can do with your hands.
I died laughing when she said that.
Obviously implying, he's a woodworker, so that's what she meant, but it was perfect.
Carried a heavy implication of something else. I really loved the fact that she was a fan of his work.
Already, previously, before having met him.
Already a fan of his work. The fact that she didn't recognize him, I mean, being in the industry, maybe she should have recognized him, but you don't really know a woodworker and a craftsman by their picture. So you would know.
And he also owns a family business. So even if there were pictures in the media of the business and of people from the business, it may be pictures of his father or grandfather or someone else in the family that had started the business or had been in the role before him. So it is very possible. She recognized his name once she heard the full name.
Yeah.
She made the connection very quickly and figured it out. So it wasn't awkward or weird.
So this guy, Nick B, is played by Christopher Russell, who has had a really, really inclusive career as being the leading man and the other guy.
The other man.
He really has.
And coming up in the somewhat near future, we also get to see him expand as we get to see what he looks like in Red Surge. Because he will be on the new When Hope Calls. Which I didn't actually make the connection initially when they announced he was in this movie. And I was just like, when that hit me, I was like, oh my gosh, that's cool. It honestly probably wasn't, I mean, I'm sure some people thought of it and made the connection, but because When Hope Calls is not on Hallmark, it's not necessarily done on purpose.
Yeah.
It could have been, but you don't really know that, what the timelines were for all of that.
Man, we need to get Ben and Kurt roles in When Calls the Heart or When Hope Calls ASAP.
Pronto.
Christopher Russell is obviously very handsome, very well built. They gave him something that was, I thought, fit him very well. Mm-hmm. Being a woodworker, being a craftsman, that just seems to fit him.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like what they did with Nick B and how, like you said, they gave him attractability for a completely different reason.
Yeah, and it also, like we said, all three of these guys very different, because you've got like firefighter out there saving people's lives and having what is looked at in his community. He's modeling for firefighter calendars and everything. Like, he's known for his looks. But also his strength and his like physical sense of what he can do to help people. So he's still helping people. He is very selfless in that way. Right. he might be a little self-absorbed, but he is selfless also.
Yes. It's a very interesting fine line balance.
It really is. He's got facets. Yeah.
Hey, Nick B, Sarah.
But Nick B, very much down to earth.
Yeah.
Very family oriented, very much community oriented, with his family not only having the furniture store and everything, but also making the Christmas market that they put on every year. And so very much just that very, very laid back, very kind of the opposite of self-absorbed, just like very, very much just like, this is what we're doing. Just normal people, you know, making some furniture.
He's very easygoing, but he's also a hard worker. And he believes in working with his hands and not just, you know, sitting by and watching clients pass you. He's down there with the work.
And being very creative and artistic and wanting to help people through that. So when she explains what's happening with her show, he didn't even ask if there was like, do you want to buy something for it? He immediately, I'll loan you anything you need.
Yep.
You know? And I mean, yes, that's a great business move. It gets your work seen.
Well,
that could be fabulous marketing. But it was the very first thought he had was, of course, you can have anything you want to borrow.
Which brings us to Nick A. How many times is this guy going to play a doctor?
He plays it well.
Plays it completely well. Ben, you make a fantastic doctor.
What I loved about this character is that they truly went all out. They were like, what on paper sounds like the absolute best catch you would ever meet in your entire life? Pediatric neurosurgeon who has done Doctors Without Borders to help children like volunteering to help children.
Yeah.
Amazing humor and
Yes.
can tame reindeer. So, I mean, what else is there? And romantic. Can you name anything in any Hallmark movie that really like for like a first date was bigger than that?
Renting out an entire ice skating rink.
And having champagne, not only an ice skating rink, the ice skating rink that you and the girl both went to as a child, that is a connection that the two of you have.
Yep.
With your memories, nostalgia factor, all of that. That's just wow. Hallmark went big, and Ben Ayers was the right choice.
Yes, he was, because he knows how to play a doctor.
Knows how to play a romantic lead. I mean, he really does. It really, what I loved about this piece is that they did, even though there were amazing choices in all three Nicks, they really led with like, how can you possibly find something wrong with this guy?
Right.
Because that really is the best thing you can do, I think, in a romance, is you're comparing these people and like, yeah, you should be perfect. And yet I don't feel that way about you.
Right.
I mean, that really was powerful for her to come to that realization.
Mm-hmm. No, it truly was. I have to wonder how many tomatoes got pegged at this poor man, though, because he got the first kiss in this movie. And I thought, oh no.
And they all didn't get kisses. I was kind of waiting to see if there would be some, like even just like a peck on the cheek or something with the others. But I think that was really the thing, is they were trying to portray it as A is the choice that she should be leaning towards. It makes the most sense. It's the one that should make the most sense.
But
B is really there to tempt her a lot and to wonder if he really is the right choice, because he's more down to earth. It's a little bit more realistic, maybe.
And C is the eye candy.
C is just like the eye candy, and like, oh wow, you're great. I do really like, yeah. But he also is like out there saving lives. So I mean, he is a good guy. He picked the perfect Christmas tree. My family goes to a Christmas tree lot, not a lot, a farm. We go to a farm every year and walk around for like 2 hours. It's not a big farm.
So what you're saying is this guy would have a real chance with you if you were single.
You know, if he could show me how to pick a perfect Christmas tree with children and not have them fighting and get them to agree that this is the perfect tree, yeah, he'd be the perfect catch.
There you go.
Because that's impossible.
Yeah, that is definitely impossible. Okay, so let's talk about the meet cutes.
Oh my gosh.
We got the mixed up coffee order.
Okay, so what I love is that her sister called it out. She goes, wait, you had 3 rom-com meet cutes.
Yeah.
Because these are all things that have happened in Hallmark movies.
Uh-huh. So we got the coffee, actually not the coffee mix-up. They both had the same exact order.
Which was very specific.
Very specific. And, you know, I'm not a coffee drinker. Sarah's more of a tea drinker, but I know for our friend Casey, that would mean a match made in heaven. She would be hearing the angels sing.
If you're like, wow, we have this really crazy, unique order and we both like it. And then if you think about it, so what I loved about this meet cute is they're both there at the same time. They both order the same crazy drink. The irony that his cup had his name on it.
Yeah.
And yet the guy didn't just call out Nick. He called out the weird, complicated order so that she could hear it and go, oh my gosh, that's mine too. When the coffee guy knows the 2 people ordered that weird, crazy order back to back. Like it's definitely one of those things where there's no reason it should have happened that way, and it did, which lends to the magic piece of the movie, because they had to connect and make those connections and figure out that they both drink this drink. They both drink this drink because of that skating rink where they used to get that drink. All these connections. And then how cute was it that he gave her his cup with it and added his number to it? That's cute.
That's adorable.
And then he took her cup and now he knows her name. Like, that's cute.
It is. So do you think the barista did it on purpose?
With a little help from Santa.
While we're still on Nick A, let's talk about the injury.
So we talked about the first date a bit. He obviously went for nostalgia factor and maybe a little, I don't know, impress factor.
You think?
Okay, it's Christmas time. It's within 3 weeks of Christmas. We already know that.
Yeah.
And an outdoor skating rink that is open probably only during the holidays. That's going to be really expensive to rent out.
Well, the guy's a pediatric neurosurgeon. He can afford it.
Sure. I'm just like, I'm sure they don't even offer renting that out because this is their busy season.
Probably. Yes.
So he went in there and was like, how much do I have to pay you to get this place private tonight?
And then champagne on top of that. And then everything goes wrong.
But first, there was a lot of flirting.
Oh, there was a lot of flirting, but that wasn't an injury.
Okay, Cammie, if you're on a date with a guy, back when you're single, you're on a date, and he tells you that he tamed a reindeer in order to get medicine to a remote village. After he has rented out a private area so there's nobody around, I might feel a little nervous that this guy's not exactly who he says he is.
Oh my God.
This was a little bit too much, which is why I loved it, because it was so crazy that you're just like, wow, this guy's a catch. But in reality, I don't know if I would have believed him.
He got brought down to earth by a cork.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I said when I was tweeting, when she said, well, a car crash draws drama too, when she was talking to her sister. And then I said, what about people crashing?
Other than the actual in the eye cork, like, because gosh, that had to hurt. But the way she fell and he caught her, and like there was so much romantic about that. Even, and like if you just would have fallen, that still would have been an adorable, cute date.
At least they were both able to laugh about it.
And I will say, like, amazing sense of humor. Yeah. He really, that character multiple times gave hilarious one-liners.
Yes, I agree. Okay, time to go to Nick B's meet cute and injury, but meet cute first, which happened right after the meet immediately after with Nick A.
And this was reminiscent of specifically it's Christmas Eve.
Yes.
Had a very similar meet cute, which was actually the first Hallmark movie where I actually heard them use the term meet cute in the movie.
Yeah, me too.
That was why that always sticks with me.
No, I had the exact same thought.
It was perfectly done to show the contrast of like how fast all of these situations are going to like pile on for her so that she can really see that it's like an obvious intentional thing that she's meeting these men. Yeah. I think if she'd met them at different times, it might not have like hit her. in the same way.
So the other thing that I really liked was just this tiny little touch of reality, because I think in some cases we have seen coffee spill and it's just, oh, I spilled coffee.
Oops.
He says, oh, that's warm. I said, thank you. Burning hot coffee spilling down your chest is not gonna feel good. So
but also, and again, this shows how down to earth and how normalized this character is, because he had every right to yell at her.
Oh, he did,
like,
completely.
Just have some big reaction. And the fact that his reaction was to very calmly say that that's really warm as you're being scalded. It's a good character. I like him.
Yeah, he's got a good heart in there. Speaking of which, did you think that he was going to bear the skin covering that heart? Because I was going, oh my gosh, is he actually gonna do it?
I did initially think that. I would not put a sweater on over the shirt that's soaked in coffee.
Neither would I.
I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, I also understand why you wouldn't just take your shirt off on the street in December, but I mean, I get it. And it was an odd choice. I will also say, if I had already seen the firefighter scene where he has his shirt off, I probably would have dang well expected him to take his shirt off. Like, okay, we're going to have them all take their shirts off in a completely different, for completely different reasons. Find a way for all of them to have this happen. But yeah, it was kind of in this way, it was almost like we didn't have any hint of that with the first one. Then we had, oh, maybe he's going to take his shirt off with the second one. And then the third one took his shirt off.
That was the done deal.
There, it was like 1, 2, 3, ABC.
Well, and the introduction of the sweater, and that it wasn't just a random sweater in her bag.
Oh, I happen to have this.
And then she says, oh, she always makes them too baggy. It's an established prop in the course of the movie, which I really, really appreciated. And then, of course, it fits him perfectly.
Perfectly. And looks spectacularly well on you.
looks incredible on him. So
yeah. No,
now I have to ask, did she get the sweater back? So, because
I mean, that was the implication, is he gave her his number, he put his number in her phone so that he could get the sweater back to her. Was the original
but I
thing.
never saw him give it back to her.
That's true, but she had a big purse. She carried around that big purse all the time.
That's very true.
Stuff just appearing in it from Santa. So, you know.
It was her own Mary Poppins bag.
It's like the Santa bag.
There you go.
It's magic.
All right. And now this is probably my favorite injury.
What were these snowballs made out of?
I don't know. I mean, it could be snow, because there's snow around them, and it could be snow with a bonding agent or something like that to keep them round. And I mean, the whole point was that she threw it so hard and
with awful aim.
That can I just put in here Chris saying to the guy at the game, that's gotta be worth something, right?
Well, it's hilarious because, first of all, people that run these games, they're not giving these things out if you don't do exactly what is said. And that was a good prize. That was not some 50-cent made in Taiwan, like, piece of stuffed animal that's going to fall apart tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like you get at most of these games. That was a good quality prize. And the part that got me was, technically speaking, the guy that got injured is that guy's boss. Yeah. So You're running this carnival game at this Christmas market, and your boss gets pelted by the game piece. They didn't win the game the way the game is supposed to be won, and here you're giving out prizes without even really knowing if your boss is okay.
But he had his back to him, so I don't
So he
know
might not have
if-
known.
Yeah. But when you
That
put
was
it all
what-
together, you can
It's pretty funny.
also have the perspective that Nick B got taken out at his own Christmas market.
Yeah. I will say, I wish that we'd seen a little bit more of the date. I wish that there'd been a little bit more there before she ran into Chris, and had that, but just because there seemed like so much of Nick A's date was seen.
Well, I think that was done on purpose.
Right. Again, I think they were building up Nick A to be the most perfect, Nick B to be a great second choice, and Nick C to just, again, be the eye candy temptation there. Really quick, on Nick B, what I loved was he was still having a sense of humor also. He was saying things like, I guess that proves you're a real knockout because you knocked me out. And he was also being extremely kind and respectful throughout what we did see of that date. Like, it shows you a completely different type of date, but goes to how down home and comfortable he is, but in a completely different light than the other date.
Yeah, because you have elegant and classy and
spare no expense,
very expensive, to the more homey community type. So now moving on to Nick C's meet cute, which of the three, I think this one was my favorite. Who doesn't dream of literally having their life saved by a handsome stranger?
Who turns out to be a fireman and model.
I mean, there are very few ways that could have been an improved first meeting. Very few ways.
Yes, agreed.
So yeah, that was probably my favorite meet cute of the three.
And for a Christmas movie, to have him save her from being run over by a reindeer.
That's very seasonal.
Very seasonal.
Yeah. And then the ambulance trip.
Okay, a couple questions. One, I have never been at a party or an event where you have these cookies that are A, pre-decorated, and then you're supposed to decorate them more. That was confusing to me. And B, anytime I've ever been at something where you decorate, there's usually almond powder. I would never have that. You don't put nuts out at a public kind of event like that. It's a very high allergen. It's odd that you would do that. And it's very odd that anybody would pick nuts to give to someone they don't know without having done that. And if you have a common allergen and someone just walks up and hands you something, I would think you would just be used to saying, oh, stuff nuts in it. Like, I mean, I know people with nut allergies and they don't just randomly eat things.
Yeah.
Because it could do that to them.
Yeah. He was too trusting.
He was way too trusting.
He was too trusting, and she was blinded by his good looks.
Yes.
We'll go with those two things. I mean, it's Christmas magic. It's whimsy, right?
I know. It was just the perfect storm of things, but I was just like, really?
I know.
It would have been better if it had been something a little more obscure. But it just seems like nuts is like something that so many people are allergic to that it wouldn't be a common thing you just throw onto something.
I did find it interesting that the cookies were already decorated. And then I mean, it's not totally out there, give people something to start and then they just add their own little improvements, kind of like build your own pizza or something like that.
Yeah.
But
totally. Good idea. But they looked like finished cookies.
They did to me too. But I do have to say, so if we're talking about an ingredient that could cause that bad of an allergic reaction, what would you pick? What would you pick to be the
If I was writing it,
yeah.
I would just go with something more obscure that isn't like the most common allergen. I think something like a seed, like a poppy seed potentially, even though
Okay.
you might see that a little bit more. A fruit, like
Okay.
adding some sort of juice to something, or maybe it's like a drink, like you get drinks and she like squeezes the lemon into it or something. I don't, something where it just would be less obvious.
Okay. Okay.
And then she could even be like, what do you mean you have an allergy to lemons? Who has an allergy to lemons? Like, like have it not be like shocking that he has an allergy to nuts, because that's pretty common.
Yeah. But I gotta say, the way they bulged out his face, that was classic.
That makeup department did a fabulous job. It looked very realistic, and that was really funny.
Realistic and over the top at the same time.
Exactly. No, a great way to kind of end that one. Also, though, before we end on this date, though, this was where we started to see some, I don't want to say red flags, but some like
they were red flags. They were red
questions. He really set their conversation up to make it sound like
he had no idea what she was talking about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I really did get the impression when he asked her what she was looking for in a Christmas tree that he was asking her about in a man. I did get that impression that he was asking that from the way he phrased it, when clearly he was asking about a Christmas tree.
Apparently.
And so, and I also love that they used this opportunity to sneak in just like a little bit of her dating history, because that's the only time in this movie that comes up.
It is.
Like what her baggage might be in this, in the dating world. And so to say that she caught her last Christmas tree secretly texting his ex-girlfriend, and that this was like a mistake she had made. That was her impression, was I made a mistake going out with this guy, versus I got tricked by a jerk, like,
yeah,
it's an interesting perspective to kind of show kind of what mindset she's in, is that she blames herself for that, which is kind of crazy. But I do like that he then, when he figures out that she's talking about guys, that he says, well, I don't believe in mistakes. I think that all of that happened for a reason, or we wouldn't be here together tonight. And he sent her flowers while he was in the hospital.
That is very true.
That's weird and sweet.
Weird and sweet.
I'm sorry. No matter how much I like you, I'm probably not thinking about you at that moment.
Probably not.
I'm like, my face is swollen up double its size.
Can you please send an order of emotions?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to why we're really here.
Okay. So what I love is that the sister said, you had 3 meet cutes? No, she didn't. She had 4, and she just didn't know it.
That's what I said. Even Aaron tweeted out nothing like 3 meet cutes back to back. And I went, wait a minute, there were 4. And yes, the 4th one was first, and it was separated from the others, but don't forget that 4th meet cute, even though that was horribly embarrassing and horribly awkward.
But it was also so rom-com coded.
Oh, yes.
How many movies are there where you mistake the guy for some random person and actually complain to the guy about the guy? I mean, that happens so many times. So that's what I love, is they really tried hard to make all 4 of these meet cutes kind of like trope in the Christmas movie world.
Yeah,
which
all 4 guys had their own tropes.
it was really, really funny because you actually got 4 movies out of one
It's
in
true.
some ways.
And I mean, I've always wondered what Aaron and Ben would look like as a leading couple in a Hallmark movie. So now I know. And we also know
Exactly.
what Aaron and Chris would look like together. So
Mhm. Yeah. It was really a fun concept. The fact that this is one of, we were talking off camera about this, Cami, that this is one of the only movies where they really have brought in multiple big names
yeah,
besides the 2 leads. I mean, there have been a handful, but very few.
yeah,
And it really showed just how special this movie was. It
yes,
wasn't some concept that was like crazy over the top, but it was something very unique to have all these different storylines kind of enmeshing together and have it be, I'm really glad that this was a movie that had the magical elements to it.
yes. That's something that we were talking about with Deliver Me a Podcast. If the magic had not been an element, this probably would not have worked.
No.
It's because they had the magic in there that this movie storyline worked. And, you know, you can't get a storyline like this outside of a dating show. And
Mhm.
that's why I thought it was so cute that it had mention of the 3 Nicks getting their own dating show at the end of the movie, but not putting it in her storyline. I thought
Mhm.
that is brilliant. That
It
is
really is.
brilliant because they didn't invoke yet another trope of meeting a whole bunch of guys. They just made mention of it, and you can imagine them going forward with that. So, the man who directed this, his name is Ryan Landals, and he
Mhm.
also wrote this movie. I don't know how many of you
Mm.
remember that detail, but he wrote and directed. So he
Nice.
knew what he wanted. He had that vision. And so he executed it to just the right parameters that he had written it for. So,
Nice. Nice.
yeah.
I would, and even given that, there might even be hope given knowing that now. I could get on board with not necessarily a sequel, but a spinoff. I'd like to see that dating show of those 3 guys and what happens.
As long as we get to see more of Olivia and Chris.
I mean, I feel like they could be like the secondary storyline in that one. Like be like they could like have some cameos and be showing what's going on in the background because they're working in television, so they clearly could be somehow involved in that show.
Yeah.
Um, but I would like to see that. I think that was a fun. I think those were fun characters
Yeah.
that would be fun to see again, and I loved how they played off of each other when they finally met.
Okay, the one thing that did not make sense was the fact that they were beating each other up. And then she said, Nick, what? All 3 of them at once. But then she says, what are you doing? And they said, well, that's what we all want to know from you. I'm like, then why are you beating each other up?
Well, I think it was, I mean, obviously it was a great comedy scene that you had to work in there, but I think it's just one of those like in the moment you get angry, but then once you see her, you realize, wait, we're not mad at each other. We're mad at you.
Yes.
You weren't
But
there, so we were taking it out on each other.
still they're beating each other up and then saying, this is your fault.
That was fabulous. And I will tell you, I really want to know how that showed on screen. The fact that that was being filmed live and they didn't actually finish anything about the house and nobody actually knew who the Knicks were. It was very interesting to me that that all like worked out really well. But I
Yeah.
can totally see how it could be and how you could spin that on TV and social media and everything. But it was just, I was like, wow, I would really like to see how that actually looked to other people. But it was hilarious. And the scene where she's seeing each of them like arrive and like panic, beautifully done. I loved how her character was very anxious.
Yeah.
Not anxious in a super self-conscious way. She was a very confident character. Like if you're comparing her to say to Miranda from Father Christmas movies, who was very self-conscious, anxious. She was a very confident person about her job and her skill level and everything she could do. But she was just like the way she repeated words all the time. Oh, no, 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 no. Like the way she would do that over and over again in different ways. I think that was really great because it really set her apart. I think when you have somebody like Erin who's so well known from one character, like Elizabeth, is that you do have to find these little character personality traits to put into new characters so that you don't seem like you're just Elizabeth in modern day clothes. You know, you have to like really set aside different perspective to be putting forth. And she did a good job of that.
She did. Okay, now let's go to why we're really here. Let's talk about Olivia and Chris. All right, it's really funny that you would say, to separate one character from another, because two things that I noticed right away about Chris were similarities that he had with Jack. And I just went, oh, I'm so glad they did that. So, number one, it was the thoughtful gesture of the snow falling in the sleigh with the hot chocolate. I just went, that is such a Jack move. That is such a Jack move. It reminded me of when Jack set all the candles out on their land and had the tent, and he had put the invitation on the chalkboard and everything. I just went, oh yeah, this is what this guy does. It doesn't matter what era he's in.
Yeah, no. But what set it apart from When Calls the Heart is that we talked a lot about how Elizabeth didn't really have a lot of gestures to Jack. But what I loved in this movie is that they each did the exact same type of gesture to each other.
They did, yes.
Both taking something from each other's past. So it wasn't even just like, I'm doing this really nice thing for you that I think is sweet or romantic. It's something that's meaningful to you that you shared with me. And so her decorating the tree out front of his apartment and him doing the sleigh ride, both were very equally measured acts of kindness to each other.
Yes, and thoughtfulness. Yeah. And then the other thing, I don't know if this is a Dan thing or if it just is coming over from Jack. I mean, I'm starting to wonder how many episodes of When Calls the Heart did Mr. Landels watch in preparation? But when he did May I with the cuff of her jacket, there was a button missing and he tied the red bow. He said, May I? Immediately, that shoots off about 20 May I's from When Calls the Heart in my head. And I just went, oh gosh, I hope that was on purpose. But if it's not, it's a serendipitous coincidence.
My guess would be it's a Dan thing.
It could have easily been an ad lib.
Yeah. Just if that's just the way he speaks and it just kind of came out that way and they're like, that works, go with it. And that could be why it was in Jack's character so much as well, because that's just how he was speaking.
Do you remember helping me with a blog where we counted the May I's?
Oh my gosh, that's right. Yes, I do. I had forgotten.
That was something that I really pulled away from the character of Jack. And so when it's there and it's of a thoughtful thing, it's not feeling an ankle to see if it's broken, or feeling a knee to see if it's bruised or fractured, but it's tying a bow so that nothing happens to the cuff of her coat. Just cute, thoughtful, and it brought up a whole lot of nostalgia.
Yeah. I kind of felt the opposite a lot. Like I had a lot of nostalgia in the way that they interacted with each other, but just in their general sense of them, I didn't, because it was just so different being so modernized versus When Calls the Heart, because
absolutely,
like most of the words they're saying, like that isn't the way you spoke back then.
No, that's the beauty of this movie, is there were the nostalgic
so
touches, and the chemistry was, right where they left off, but they are both very talented, enough so that you can see two completely different characters, and it's in a completely different setting.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the end. So, my one problem with this movie is that, and I'm going to preface this by saying that I know that it probably would not have worked for them to be in a relationship or to have a kiss prior to the end, but because they are who they are, oh gosh, I wanted more romance, even though I love the banter. I love the banter and the sarcasm and the playing off each other that they do so well. But I just went, oh man, only one kiss. Dang it. So, okay, technically
too, but yeah, no, I agree. It would have been nice to have had more scenes. I was glad, as much as we despise almost kisses, I was actually glad that that had existed in this movie, because like you said, we wanted there to be more romantic chemistry between them, and having that scene really did show that, like, oh, they are attracted to each other.
Yes, this is one place where an interrupted kiss worked. It's true. Yes, it's very true. It actually worked, because that scene is what gave the base for the end scene, because there weren't, I mean, there were
others, but yes, it strengthened.
That was the one.
It strengthened it. And that way, when she was saying like, oh my gosh, I have these feelings for you, it's based on something. It's not just like, oh, we've been fighting for 3 weeks and I think that means I love you.
It must be an Elizabeth and Darcy thing,
Right.
Okay. Did you call the name thing?
Like from the very beginning, I knew there had to be something with the name, because obviously the note is saying his name's Nick. You got to find your Nick.
But it was only that one time when the word shifted, I started wondering, oh, is it?
I started wondering, and I thought, okay, it's going to change. And then when we got down to the very end, okay, so I watched most of this with Sophia, and then she had some other things she had to do, and she didn't get to watch the ending with me. And so I was watching it, but I was watching it with my earbuds in, so I wouldn't be disturbing her. And so she came over at this one point, she's like, where are you at? Did she figure out? I mean, because we all know she's supposed to be with him, right?
Of course.
And so she's like, did she figure out that he's the guy that she's been looking for? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, what's the deal with the name? I was like, still don't know. I think maybe it's just nothing. I haven't figured that part out yet. Like, I know she knows that it's him. It was right after the conversation with the sister, where the sister was like, what about the name? And so I was kind of thinking, maybe we're not really going to have an answer to that, or maybe the answer is going to be very vague and like, maybe that was a trick so that she would have to. Because what I absolutely loved was the line she had where she was like, I had this amazing kiss with this guy that's supposed to be my soulmate, and I felt nothing. And I felt all of this for this other guy who's not supposed to be, but I felt this in this almost moment. And so like having that like be her conviction of like, no, I don't care what the note says I'm supposed to do. I know that I feel this in my heart. And the fact that she went after him, even knowing,
Regardless.
even knowing that he might not actually, it was an interesting contradiction because she knew she had to get there by midnight. She did have conviction that she had to get there, which partly was because of when his train was leaving, but there was just that kind of contradictory message where she's like, I have to get there by this time or it'll be too late. But he's not the one that I was looking for. He's not my Nick, but he's the one that I want. And so it was a very interesting kind of way that she came to be, but it was almost more beautiful that way because it wasn't a destiny, fate kind of thing. It was her taking control of her feelings, which was kind of a nice twist to it. But then I also just love the fact that he then got a bit of the magic as well, because it made it make more sense, because it wouldn't have made sense for him, especially because at this point, he's so confused. He knows nothing about what has been going on. All he knows is that 3 guys showed up fighting over her.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's all he knows. He knows none of the other pieces to the story. So I wish we'd gotten to see him read the letter that was like words appearing on the page and seeing him like realize that there is something bigger at play here.
That would have been cool. So I had 2 theories. Number 1 was that because their names were Nick and his name was Chris, that we would have kind of a St. Nicholas, Kris Kringle thing going on.
Oh, yeah.
And so it could be a variation. But the theory that I had first, and the one that I stuck with, and I said, yep, called it, was the middle name. Now, I thought that Nicholas was his middle name. Turns out that it was Nicholas Christopher and he went by Chris. But I thought that Nick was going to be his middle name. So I was like, yeah, middle name. I called it.
Yeah, I figured it would be something like that, or stage name, or something like when he got into show business, there was already somebody.
That would have been a good one if Chris was just like Kris Kringle and St. Nicholas are 2 different names, but for the same person, having a pen name or a stage name or a show name. That would have been a really good way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, because to me, it seemed like, how did this never come up? But again, you need that for the miscommunication movies. But it, and perfect storms happen. So it didn't bother me, but I was just like, okay, there's gotta be something. He's got to be Nick.
Well, you got your wish. He was Nick.
He was Nick. All in all, it was a better train station scene with her than the last time I saw her at a train station.
I still think that this would have been the perfect movie to do with Aaron Krakow, Daniel Lissing, Chris McNally, and Kevin McGarry. And then we'll throw Andrew or Marcus in there for good measure.
Yeah. Who would have been the firefighter?
Andrew. Andrew would have been the firefighter because in 3 Wiser Men and in 3 Wise Men, he's a firefighter.
I agree with that. And I don't think he could have pulled off that level of
stupidity.
Your word, not mine. But yeah.
Oh, he could have.
I feel like it would have been Marcus. I'm sorry, Marcus. I feel like I've seen him play that type of character before. Lastly, we did not mention, big shout out to Chloe McKinnon from When Calls the Heart, our young Lily, Faith's little adopted daughter, who is just taking all the Hearties by storm this last year. Played a wonderful young Darcy,
Yes.
Aaron's little sister. So that was so sweet to see.
And the little actress who played the young Olivia was young Junebug.
I know, and that was such a sweet movie.
Yes.
With Autumn. Yeah.
All right, Hearties, we hope that you have enjoyed this walk down
I see what you did there.
with this incredible movie that we adored. We're sure you adored it too. Let us know what you thought about it in the comments, and we will catch you next time. Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas, Hearties.